Alex had always known that the farm was special. It wasn't just a piece of land. It was a legacy, a connection to a past that spanned generations. The field stretched endlessly beneath wide skies, and the barn, though worn from years of use, stood proudly as a symbol of hard work, persistence, and family. For Alex, the farm had been more than just home. It was the center of everything. Their childhood was filled with the rhythms of early mornings, the smell of freshly cut hay, and the endless cycle of planting and harvesting. It was a life that was simple yet fulfilling, and the farm was their sanctuary, the one place that would always remain constant in a world that seemed to change with every passing year. When Alex's parents had passed away unexpectedly in a car accident the previous year, they were left with a deep, aching hole in their heart. Their parents had been their role models, teaching them everything about farming, family, and responsibility. The news of their deaths had shattered Alex, but the shock soon turned into a sense of duty. Alex was the only one left to keep the farm running, to ensure the legacy of hard work and tradition continued. The farm, which had been in the family for over 100 years, now rested in Alex's hands. It was a responsibility Alex was both honored and terrified by. The inheritance came with its fair share of paperwork, lawyers, and legalities, but Alex handled it all. The process was long, tedious, and at times overwhelming, but Alex understood it had to be done. They couldn't just walk away. This farm was their birthright, and it was their job to protect it, to keep it in the family. Then, just a few months after the dust had settled from the funeral and the will had been read, something unexpected happened. Jessica, Alex's sister, whom they hadn't seen in over 5 years, came back into the picture. Jessica had always been the rebellious one. While Alex had stayed close to home, working alongside their parents and eventually taking over the farm, Jessica had moved away to the city, eager to escape the rural life. She'd gone to college, then taken a job in a corporate office, and, over time, her visits to the farm became less frequent. There had been no argument, no falling out, just distance. Over the years, Alex had grown used to her absence, and even when they saw her name on the occasional holiday card or family gathering invite, they never thought much of it. But now, out of the blue, she was back. At first, Alex was surprised, even pleased. They had always hoped Jessica would return someday. The farm, after all, was a family place, and it seemed right that both siblings should be involved in its future. But when Jessica arrived at the farm on that crisp spring morning, everything changed. She wasn't just visiting. She had come with an agenda. Alex had been tending to the garden when they heard the familiar sound of a car pulling up the gravel driveway. They wiped their hands on their jeans, wiped their forehead with the back of their hand, and walked toward the front porch. There, standing in front of the farmhouse, was Jessica. "Hey, Alex," she said, offering a half-hearted smile as she stepped out of her car, a sleek black sedan that looked out of place in front of the weathered farmhouse. "It's been a while." Alex raised an eyebrow, surprised but trying to mask it. "Yeah, it has. What's up? You here for a visit?" Jessica hesitated for a moment before nodding, her eyes darting nervously around the yard. "Actually, no. I need to talk to you. It's kind of important." Alex's heart skipped a beat. There was something in Jessica's tone, something that made the air feel tense. "Sure, come on in," Alex said, leading her into the farmhouse. They hadn't seen each other in years, but the house still felt like home. The wooden beams, the old furniture, the scent of coffee in the kitchen. It all brought back memories, some sweet, some painful. Once inside, Alex offered Jessica a cup of coffee. They sat down at the kitchen table, a place where they had spent countless hours growing up, talking about their day, their hopes, their dreams. But this time, the atmosphere was different, charged with an undercurrent of tension. "Alex," Jessica began, her voice tight, "I need to ask you something. It's kind of big." Alex leaned forward, curious but wary. "What's going on, Jess?" Jessica hesitated, her hands twisting in her lap. "I've been thinking a lot lately. About the farm. About everything." Alex raised an eyebrow, unsure where this conversation was headed. "Okay, what about the farm?" Jessica took a deep breath. "I want it. I want the farm, Alex." The words hit Alex like a punch to the stomach. They blinked, trying to process what Jessica had just said. "What do you mean you want it?" This is my home, Jess. You haven't even been here in years. You moved away. I know, Jessica interrupted, her voice rising slightly. But things have changed. I am struggling. I don't have much left in the city. I lost my job, and the cost of living is insane. I've been thinking, I need the farm, Alex. It's my only chance. It's not fair that you have it all. You've had it all your life. I need a fresh start. I'm asking you to give it to me. Alex stared at her, stunned. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. The farm was not just a piece of land. It was a legacy. It was everything their parents had worked for, everything Alex had worked for. How could Jessica just waltz in and demand it? Jess, Alex said, struggling to keep their voice calm, this farm is my life. It's not just something I can give away. It's our family's legacy. It's been in the family for generations. You know that. I don't care about that, Jessica said sharply. You don't understand. I need it. I've got nothing left. I don't want to beg, but I'm asking for your help. You don't need this place anymore. You've got a career, a future. You've got everything. Just give it to me. I can make something of it. Alex felt their blood run cold. They had worked their entire life to make the farm thrive. They had taken over the reins when their parents passed, and every decision, every move had been made with the hope of honoring their family's work. But now, Jessica, who hadn't even been involved in the farm for years, was asking for it. Alex had never imagined that a conversation about the farm would ever turn into a demand. I don't know what to say, Jess. I don't think I can just give it to you. Jessica's face hardened. You're being selfish. You don't even need it, Alex. You're just holding on to it because of some old memories. The farm's not a museum. It's not some relic from the past. I need it to survive. Alex was shaking now, not from fear, but from anger. How could Jessica be so blind to the significance of what she was asking? This wasn't just a piece of property. It was home. Their home. Jess, I'm not going to just hand it over. You're not entitled to it. I worked my ass off to keep this place going, and now you think you can just walk in and take it? Jessica stood up, frustration written all over her face. Fine. If you won't give it to me, I'll do whatever I have to. I'll get it. You'll see. This farm belongs to both of us, and I'm going to make sure the rest of the family sees it that way. Alex froze, watching Jessica storm out of the house and back to her car. For a moment, the weight of her words hung in the air, suffocating Alex. What was happening? Why was Jessica suddenly acting like this? And how could their own sister turn against them so easily? Alex stood there in the empty kitchen, their thoughts racing. They had never imagined this day would come. The farm, their family's home, was now a battlefield, and the war had only just begun. Alex hadn't expected things to escalate so quickly. After Jessica's dramatic request for the farm, Alex had hoped that the confrontation would pass, that cooler heads would prevail. But it was clear that Jessica was serious. The farm, once a place of calm and security, had now become the focal point of an intense and confusing battle. The first few days after Jessica's demand were filled with long, sleepless nights where Alex couldn't shake the feeling that the farm was slipping away, not to some outsider, but to someone who was supposed to be family. The thought gnawed at them, gnawing away at the peace they had once taken for granted. The tension between them was palpable. Jessica had left the farm in a huff, but Alex knew that this wasn't the end of it. If anything, it felt like the beginning of something much larger. And sure enough, only days later, the phone call started. The first call came from their Aunt Carol, who, like many others in the family, had always been a kind but fiercely opinionated woman. She had always stood by Alex, even when Jessica had gone off to the city and seemed to forget about the family's heritage. However, Alex could already sense the shift in tone in Aunt Carol's voice when she called. Alex, Aunt Carol began, her voice low and serious. I heard about what happened with Jessica. You know, she's in a rough place right now. She's really struggling, and I think you need to understand that. Alex's jaw tightened as they leaned against the kitchen counter. I understand that, Aunt Carol, but it doesn't change the fact that the farm is mine. I can't just hand it over because she's having a hard time. Aunt Carol was silent for a moment, and Alex could hear the sigh on the other end of the line. I get that. I do. But Alex, this is family. Jessica is your sister. Maybe she didn't appreciate the farm before, but she's come back now. Maybe it's time to consider what's best for everyone. What if you shared it? What if you gave her a stake in it? This farm, it's been in the family for generations. We've all worked hard to keep it alive. Maybe it's time for a change. Alex felt their stomach drop. Aunt Carol, you don't understand. I've worked my whole life for this. I'm not going to give up everything I've worked for just because Jessica decided she wanted it now. I'm not saying you have to give it up, Alex, Aunt Carol replied, her voice gentle but firm. But maybe it's time to think about what the future holds for both of you. You've both been through a lot. Maybe you could work together. Alex was silent. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. Work together? After everything? It felt like a betrayal from Aunt Carol, someone who had always been there, supporting them. To suggest they share the farm with Jessica now felt like a slap in the face. Before Alex could respond, Aunt Carol added, "You'll need to think long and hard about this. And I think you should talk to your uncles, too. It's not just about you and Jessica. This affects all of us." The call ended, but the seeds of doubt had been planted. For the first time, Alex wondered if maybe they were being too stubborn, too protective of something that could be shared. Maybe Aunt Carol was right. Maybe it would be easier to just give Jessica a piece of the farm. Maybe it would bring peace to the family. But deep down, Alex knew it wasn't that simple. The next call came 2 days later, this time from Uncle Rick. He had always been the most pragmatic of the family, the one who understood business, investments, and the practicalities of life. But this call was different. Uncle Rick's voice was colder, sharper. "Alex," he said, "I've been talking to Carol, and I think you need to face the facts. The farm is too big for one person to handle. I know you've been managing it alone, but with the market the way it is and your situation, well, it's just not sustainable. Maybe it's time to consider a change." Alex felt a surge of anger. "What do you mean, Uncle Rick? Are you suggesting I sell it? Give it away?" No, nothing like that," Rick replied quickly. "But maybe it's time for a partnership. Maybe you and Jessica can split the responsibilities. She needs it, Alex. And maybe you could use the help. Things are tough, and you don't have to do it alone. It would be a good move for both of you." Alex's mind raced. How could Uncle Rick, who had always been about hard work and independence, suggest something like this? A partnership with Jessica? The very same sister who had walked away from the farm for years? The very same sister who, just days ago, had demanded Alex get it to her? "I don't think that's a good idea," Alex said firmly, their voice thick with emotion. "I don't think you understand what's at stake here. This is more than just a farm. This is my family's legacy." "I understand," Alex, Uncle Rick's voice softened. "But you got to think about the bigger picture. Jessica's not going anywhere, and neither are you. The farm can't stay as it is forever. Maybe it's time to find a way for both of you to make it work. Otherwise, we risk losing everything." Alex slammed the phone down in frustration, their heart racing. The pressure was building, and it wasn't coming from outside sources. It was coming from within their own family. Suddenly, it seemed like everyone had an opinion on what Alex should do with the farm. Everyone had advice, suggestions, or demands. No one had the decency to ask how Alex felt. The following weeks brought more tension. Family gatherings, once a source of comfort and familiarity, became a battlefield. Every conversation somehow circled back to the farm, to Jessica's demands, to Alex's refusal to share it. Family members picked sides, and it was clear the division was growing deeper by the day. Uncle Frank, who lived in the city, had always been distant from the farm. But during a family dinner, he sided with Jessica, citing her financial struggles and his belief that Alex didn't need the farm. "Alex, you've got a career, you've got other options. Jessica's the one who really needs this place. She's been through a lot, and you've been so focused on holding on to this farm that you're not seeing the bigger picture. You got to let it go." Alex clenched their jaw, holding back the anger that threatened to explode. "This isn't just about money, Uncle Frank. This is my home, my parents' legacy. You can't just hand it over like it's some property to be divided." Frank's expression softened, but his tone remained firm. "I get that, but you're not seeing the whole picture. It's not just about memories. It's about survival. And Jessica needs it. You got other options. It's time to think about the future, Alex." The arguments continued, the words growing sharper, the relationships more strained. Alex found themselves withdrawing from the family, their once close-knit group of relatives now becoming strangers. No matter how much they tried to explain, no one seemed to understand the depth of what was at stake. The farm wasn't just land. It was history, it was love, it was the essence of everything Alex had worked for. They couldn't just hand it over to Jessica, not after everything. Days turned into weeks, and the drama only intensified. Alex began to feel like a puppet, caught between the strings of family expectations, financial pressures, and a sense of betrayal. It was as if the farm had become a symbol of division, something that was meant to bring people together but had now torn them apart. And still, Jessica remained silent. She hadn't made another direct demand, but her presence loomed over everything. Her silence was almost more dangerous than her words. The pressure to give her the farm was mounting, and Alex could feel the weight of their family's expectations bearing down on them. Alex began to question everything. Was it possible that their refusal to share the farm was selfish? Were they being too rigid, too protective? Could they really turn their back on their sister in her time of need? The questions gnawed at them constantly, and the once simple and peaceful life on the farm now felt like a distant memory, replaced by a battle for something that, in the end, seemed impossible to win. The future seemed uncertain, and the farm, the one place that had always been their refuge, was now a symbol of everything that was falling apart. The days following the tense family conversations were a blur. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, not just with Jessica, but with the entire family. The farm had always been a place of peace and stability, but now it felt like a battleground. Every time Alex walked into the barn or tended to the fields, it was as though the land itself had become a metaphor for the deepening rift between family members. The grass that had once seemed green and vibrant now appeared to be tainted, and the familiar soil underfoot felt cold and unyielding. For weeks, the pressure from their relatives had been mounting. Aunt Carol and Uncle Rick had continued to insist that Alex was being too stubborn. Some other relatives had reached out, gently suggesting that maybe it was time for a change, for Alex to share the farm with Jessica. Alex had heard rumors that some family members were talking behind their back, whispering that they were being selfish. They felt like they were being painted into a corner, with no one offering them any real support, except for their own firm belief that they had a right to the farm. But what shook Alex the most was that Jessica was no longer talking to them directly. She had gone from angrily demanding the farm to silently making her plans. It was like she had given up on trying to convince Alex to give it to her through reasoning or emotions. Instead, she had taken a different path, one that would involve legal action. The first sign that Jessica was serious came in the form of a letter. Alex had been sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the paperwork for the farm's taxes, when the envelope arrived. It was plain, unmarked, and heavy with the weight of its implications. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable, Jessica's. Alex opened the envelope with a sinking heart, and as they pulled the letter from inside, they immediately knew what it was. The first few lines confirmed their fears. Dear Alex, I'm writing to inform you that I have hired legal representation to assist in the process of claiming my share of the family farm. I believe, based on the circumstances and family discussions, that I am entitled to a portion of the farm's ownership. I will be taking the necessary legal steps to ensure that I receive what I believe is rightfully mine. The letter was short, terse, and final. There was no attempt at reconciliation, no mention of compromise or working together. Instead, it was an ultimatum. Jessica was going to fight for the farm through the courts, and Alex wasn't sure what to do with that. For a long moment, Alex just stared at the paper, their mind racing. Could it really come to this? Could their family's legacy, something that had been passed down through generations, really be torn apart in a courtroom? Alex never imagined it would get this far. They had expected the family drama to simmer down after a while, but now, with Jessica taking the legal route, it was clear that nothing would ever be the same. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls, consultations with a lawyer, and sleepless nights. Alex had no choice but to hire legal representation of their own. After all, this wasn't just about family disagreements anymore. This was a full-fledged legal dispute over ownership. Alex met with their lawyer, a calm and methodical woman named Grace, who had handled property disputes before. Grace listened carefully as Alex explained the situation, detailing Jessica's demands and the pressure they'd been under from relatives. From what I'm hearing, Grace said, Jessica believes she has a claim on the farm because it was originally meant to be shared between both of you. But unless there's something in your parents' will that specifically states otherwise, she may not have much of a legal standing. The key here is going to be proving that you've always been the primary caretaker of the property, that you've been managing it, and that it has been your home. But the family is behind her, Alex said, their voice tight. Everyone is pushing for me to give it up. It's not just Jessica. It's everyone. Grace nodded thoughtfully. That may be true, but at the end of the day, the law doesn't care about family opinions. What matters is the paperwork, the inheritance, and who has legal ownership of the property. We'll have to look at your parents' will and the deed to the farm to be sure. Alex spent the next several days digging through their parents' old paperwork. They found the will tucked away in a drawer of their father's old desk, yellowed with age, but still legible. Alex's heart pounded as they read through the familiar lines, hoping for a clause that would give them the peace of mind they so desperately needed. It was clear from the document that both Alex and Jessica were named heirs, but the will didn't explicitly say anything about the farm. There was no mention of how it was to be divided or who would take it over. The farm was simply left to both of them, with no specifications about its future. Alex couldn't believe it. Their parents had always made it clear that the farm was meant to stay in the family, that it was a place to be cherished and preserved. But now it seemed like that simple understanding had no legal weight. The will was vague, and in the eyes of the law, there was no clear stipulation about who was supposed to own or manage the farm. Alex sat back in the chair, feeling a surge of anger mixed with helplessness. It was as if the farm had been set up for failure, left in limbo between two siblings who saw it through completely different lenses. Where Alex saw a home, Jessica saw an opportunity. And now, they were both about to be forced to fight for it. The legal proceedings began soon after. Jessica's lawyer, a man named Thomas, was aggressive from the start. His initial communication was filled with demands for documents, timelines, and statements. He accused Alex of unfairly managing the farm and said that Jessica was entitled to a portion of the land due to her rightful inheritance and her need for financial stability. There were threats of filing for an injunction to force Alex to hand over the property temporarily while the case proceeded, which left Alex feeling exposed and vulnerable. As the weeks passed, Alex found themselves sinking deeper into a legal quagmire. The more they fought back, the more the stress wore them down. There were motions to be filed, deadlines to meet, and constant back and forth with Grace, their lawyer, who worked tirelessly to protect Alex's interests. But with each passing day, Alex felt the weight of the situation pressing down harder. The farm was in danger, not from the outside world, but from within their own family. The media even got involved. A small, local news outlet picked up the story after Jessica had made a public statement, and suddenly, the legal battle wasn't just about the farm. It was about family drama. The press painted Alex as the stubborn sibling, unwilling to share, while Jessica was portrayed as the underdog, fighting to reclaim her inheritance and get the farm back. The public scrutiny made everything worse. Alex had never wanted attention or recognition. All they had wanted was to keep the farm running, to protect the place that had been their home for so long. But now, the whole town was watching. The pressure was unbearable. Throughout the legal proceedings, Alex found themselves questioning their own resolve. Could they really win this fight? Could they protect the farm from being taken away? Even if it meant alienating their entire family? The idea of standing alone, battling not only Jessica, but also everyone who had once been their support system, seemed daunting. The tension was palpable, and the stress was wearing Alex down more than they cared to admit. They had always been a resilient person, someone who could weather storms, but this was different. This was a fight for their life, for their history, and for everything they held dear. Despite everything, Alex had refused to back down. Every day, they fought for the farm, fought for the land that had been in their family for generations, fought for the memories of their parents, who had worked tirelessly to maintain the farm. But with every passing moment, It felt like they were losing more than just legal ground. They were losing the very essence of what made the farm special. The connection to the land, the feeling of belonging, the pride in preserving their family's heritage. But every time Alex stood in the fields, looking at the land that had been part of their life for so long, they knew they had to keep fighting. They couldn't let the farm go without a fight. It wasn't just about ownership. It was about preserving their parents' legacy, their own history, and the future they had worked so hard to build. The battle, both legal and emotional, raged on, and it seemed like the end was nowhere in sight. Alex felt more isolated than ever, and with each passing day, the weight of the situation grew heavier. The farm was no longer a symbol of peace. It had become a battleground where nothing seemed certain anymore. But one thing was clear: the fight was only just beginning. The legal battle had escalated, and there would be no turning back. The family was fractured, the farm was at risk, and Alex's future, once filled with certainty, was now shrouded in doubt. But they would not give up, not without a fight. The days bled into weeks, and the weeks stretched into months. Alex's life had become a whirlwind of legal meetings, endless paperwork, and sleepless nights. The family that had once been a source of comfort and support had transformed into a fractured, distant group of people, each pulling in their own direction. It had become just another asset, something to be divided and dispersed. And that was something Alex couldn't accept. The turning point came one rainy afternoon, when Alex received a phone call from Grace, their lawyer. The call was brief but clear. The court had set a date for the final hearing. This would be the moment when everything would be decided. Alex knew that it was time to prepare for the inevitable. The end of the fight was near, and they had to be ready for whatever outcome awaited them. Just don't lose yourself in this. Whatever happens, don't let it break you. Uncle Rick, on the other hand, had been a source of more pointed criticism. He continued to side with Jessica, insisting that Alex was being unreasonable. This farm can't stay in your hands forever. Alex, he had said during one heated argument, you can't keep clinging to it just because of some sentimental attachment. You're not going to win this fight. The weight of the ongoing battle had taken its toll, and Alex was beginning to feel as though they were living in a constant state of exhaustion. The farm, once a refuge and a sanctuary, had become the center of an emotional and legal storm that seemed to have no end in sight. The legal proceedings were relentless. Every time Alex thought they could take a breath, another motion or court filing would appear, dragging them back into the fray. Jessica's lawyer, Thomas, had been relentless in his pursuit, filing motion after motion, trying to push the case toward a resolution. Alex's lawyer, Grace, had been equally steadfast, but there were times when even she seemed to be running out of options. The court dates, which had initially been spaced far apart, were now coming in quick succession. Let Jessica have it. She needs it. She deserves it. Those words had stung. They stung because they were spoken by someone Alex had always respected, someone who had taught them the importance of hard work, perseverance, and the value of family. But in that moment, Alex realized that Uncle Rick's perspective had shifted. The farm was no longer a symbol of the past, a place of tradition and continuity. They couldn't keep holding on to the farm if it meant losing their sanity, their family, and their future. But letting it go would mean surrendering everything they had worked for. There seemed to be no middle ground. The battle would end, but the consequences would be far-reaching. Alex sat in the quiet of the farmhouse, staring out the window at the rain falling in sheets, washing over the fields that had been their life's work. It was hard to imagine what the future would look like without this place. The thought of giving up the farm seemed impossible, but the thought of continuing the fight also seemed unbearable. In the midst of the legal proceedings, the family's dynamic had continued to shift. The constant pressure and tension had driven wedges between Alex and some family members. Aunt Carol, once a source of support, had begun to soften her stance. She had initially encouraged Alex to consider sharing the farm with Jessica, but now she was more cautious. She still checked in on Alex, but her words had become more careful and her tone more neutral. "You've got to do what's best for you, Alex," she had said in one of their recent conversations. "I can see how hard this is on you." There was no easy answer. There were only two paths, each leading to a different future, each fraught with its own pain and uncertainty. As the date of the hearing loomed closer, Alex found themselves replaying the past, the memories of childhood spent on the farm, the days spent working alongside their parents, the love and pride they had felt in maintaining the land. They remembered the nights spent around the dinner table, laughing and talking with their family, believing that no matter what happened, the farm would always be there. But that security had been shattered, and now it seemed like nothing would ever be the same again. The night before the hearing, Alex sat alone in the farmhouse, a cup of tea in their hands. The rain had stopped, and the night was eerily quiet. They could hear the wind rustling through the trees outside, the only sound in the stillness. Alex had never felt more alone in their life. They had no idea what would happen the next day, but they knew one thing for certain. They couldn't keep going like this. Something had to change. The morning of the hearing arrived, and Alex stood outside the courthouse, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on them. They had spent the last few hours reviewing documents, preparing their statements, but nothing had prepared them for the moment they were about to face. This wasn't just a legal proceeding. This was the culmination of everything they had fought for, everything they had worked toward. The future of the farm, their family, and their own sense of self were all on the line. Inside the courthouse, the tension was thick. Jessica sat across the room, her face a mixture of determination and frustration. She had hired a new lawyer, someone more experienced, and they were clearly preparing for a fight. Alex's lawyer, Grace, gave a reassuring nod, but even she couldn't hide the exhaustion that had crept into her eyes. This was a case that had dragged on for far too long, and no matter the outcome, it would leave scars on everyone involved. The proceedings began, and the courtroom became a battleground. Each side presented their arguments, and the air was thick with emotion. Jessica's lawyer spoke with confidence, outlining the reasons why Jessica believed she was entitled to a portion of the farm. He argued that the farm was not only a financial asset, but also a symbol of family and heritage, one that Jessica had a right to reclaim. He spoke about the sacrifices she had made, her financial struggles, and her desire to return to her roots. Alex's lawyer, Grace, countered with a detailed argument about the ownership of the farm, the legalities of inheritance, and the fact that Alex had been the sole caretaker of the property for years. She emphasized that Alex had worked tirelessly to keep the farm running, had invested countless hours of labor, and had maintained the property when no one else had. She also argued that the will, while vague, had been clear in its intention to leave the farm to both Alex and Jessica, with no specific mention of sharing ownership. As the hearing dragged on, Alex's head began to spin. The back and forth, the legal jargon, the accusations, it was all too much. They didn't want to be here anymore. They didn't want to fight. They just wanted peace. Then, unexpectedly, Jessica stood up to speak. Her voice, usually so forceful, was quieter than Alex had ever heard it. "I don't want to fight, Alex," she said, her eyes searching across the room for them. "I never wanted any of this, but I'm just trying to figure out where I belong. I know I've made mistakes, and I don't expect you to just give everything up. But this farm, this place, it means so much to me. It's my heritage, too." Alex felt a lump form in their throat. For the first time in months, they saw the vulnerability in their sister's eyes. The hard exterior, the demanding attitude, everything that had driven Alex away, seemed to crack. "I know," Alex whispered, their voice shaking. "I know it means something to you, but it means something to me too. This is my home." There was a long silence, and, for a moment, it felt like the entire courtroom was holding its breath. And then, as if the tension had finally reached its breaking point, Grace stood and requested a brief recess. In the quiet of the hallway, Alex and Jessica found themselves face to face, without the lawyers, without the pressure of the courtroom. It was just the two of them. Jessica looked at Alex, her expression softer now, more open. "I don't want to ruin your life, Alex," she said, her voice trembling. I don't know what else to do." Alex took a deep breath, their mind racing. The decision they had to make seemed impossible, but in that moment, it became clear to them. They couldn't let this divide them any longer. They had spent too much time fighting, too much energy on anger and resentment. Maybe the farm couldn't remain as it was forever, but it didn't have to be lost. "I'm not giving up the farm," Alex said, their voice steady but filled with emotion. "But I'll share it with you. We'll work together. We'll figure this out." Jessica's eyes welled up with tears, and for the first time in years, Alex felt like they were seeing their sister as they once had, vulnerable, struggling, but still family. The settlement wasn't perfect. There were compromises, and it took time for both of them to adjust to their new reality. But eventually, Alex and Jessica found a way to work together. They divided the responsibilities, shared the financial burdens, and slowly began rebuilding their relationship. The farm, while no longer solely Alex's, became a place where both siblings could honor their parents' legacy and their own futures. And in time, the farm became more than just land. It became a symbol of reconciliation, of healing, and of the power of family to rebuild, even after the most difficult battles.